welcome to another video, being the last video about the deck stacking ranger, because at this point it's so min-maxed that I don't really have any upgrades left to do, other than of course changing stuff around and going for different mods, but that's for another time maybe. Since I've played this character for a couple of weeks now, being level 100 already for the majority of it, I'm kind of bored and getting burned pretty fast, since of course no upgrades to make and no levels to gain. It gets pretty repetitive. So first things first, I'm gonna do a map. Now I deliberately chose this map because there's reflect elemental damage on it, which normally as a bow character attack based you're not supposed to be doing reflect, but this build actually can do all map modes including reflect. So I just want to show that the Sextons, they don't have reflect immunity, so it's just the build is reflect immune.
Pruning a branch can save a tree. My mana is gone.
So that was the map. As you'd expect, of course, not a problem at all. I mean, even with my eye shot and my body armor, you just clear so far off screen. You have so much damage, so maps are just a breeze. I've mainly been doing 5-war maps, of course, since normal maps are just a breeze. Even 5-war maps are pretty easy with this term of budget, of course. But I'm gonna go over the gear. I'm gonna go too in depth because most of the gear is still the same as last video. So the bow, I mean, it's still the same since a couple of videos now. It's the first piece I got for this build. We did manage to finish all white sockets actually on all my gear, which is pretty nice, just looks aesthetic. Then the helm, still the same, Barrage fires additional protection on fractal thoughts. The quiver, so I did sell my other quiver, I think I'll put a picture somewhere up screen, but it pretty much also was a +1 quiver. The only differences was it had perfect attributes, so +6 more attributes, which is not that big of a deal, and then it had flat cold damage to bow attacks as well on the implicit, so it was a bit more min-maxed, but with the amount of decks we have, it's pretty minimal the damage difference, and I got a good offer, and I'm planning to sell this build off anyway, so I sold the quiver, and then I bought another one with +1, just to still have the min-max kind of feel to the character. So there's that. The amulet still the same, since I've been looking to get another amulet with tier 1 dexterity, but I've whooped them probably since over a week now and I haven't seen a single one, and there's only one of them actually with tier 1 dexterity and it's up for mirror service with a pretty large fee, so I couldn't really buy that. And the rings, so did perfectly divine this one. I think it was the same as I had before: Essence Dex, Assassin's Mark, Crit Multi, Life, Wed, and cold damage to spells and attacks. And then finished this ring, which I didn't have I think last one, so we got tier 1 Frostbite on hit, Dex, Essence, Crit Multi, and then the same prefixes: Life, cold damage to spells and attacks, and Wed, also perfectly divined. The body still the same, life, %life, essence dex, %dex, attack crit, and explode, again perfectly divined. Got the enchant on there as well and everything. I think I didn't have 6 white on this either, but I mean, as you can see, I finished that as well. The gloves still the same. I was gonna go for intimidate, but I didn't bother, since everything I do I already have too much damage for, so I didn't really bother to craft new gloves. Headhunter still the same, and the boots I think still the same. I didn't get 35 move speed on them. I think maybe last time I had 30%, but we just did some remove at speed to get that. So I think that's the gear. As for the jewels, which the biggest way we are actually reflect immune is we have 10 jewels with the implicit 10% reduced reflected amount of damage taken, so we have it on both our abyssal jewels here, on our watchers, on our brutal, and then all our cluster jewels over here. Which in total is 10 jewels, so makes us reflect immune because it's 100% then. There's only 2 other jewels, which are these, but we have an insane synthesis implicit for this one, and this one is our corrupted blood, so it turns out perfectly actually to get the reflect immune. Since our Ice Shot is all elemental damage, we don't have any Fizz, because we have 100% conversion. But the Barrage, we don't have 100% conversion, so we have a little bit of Fizz, but it's not enough to kill you, the Reflect, with that little bit. And even if it was, the Ice Shot, it's enough to kill tier 16 map bosses by itself, so you don't really need to use Barrage on map bosses. So the gear, the skills, so we did put our Ice Shot in our body, since like I said, it already has enough DPS. I've even done over 1k del for a friend with the Ice Shot in here with 2 man HP, and I still had enough damage to kill mobs in there, which mobs in Delph have a lot more damage, a lot more health, sorry, than even 5 war maps I think at that depth. I'm not quite sure, but either way, it was not a problem at all. I've even doing 5 war maps with the setup, so again, way more than enough damage. So put my Barrage in here just for that extra bit of damage. Cold Pan, Hypothermia, Inspiration, Wed, and Awaken at Cold. And the Ice Shot with Awakened Chain, Awakened at Cold, Hypothermia, Awakened Wed, and Inspiration. Still the same. Herald of Ice with Ice Bite. Not sure if I spoke about this before, but normally you would put Blood Rage instead and just have your Herald of Ice, Hatred, and Precision. But Blood Rage, since I do stand around to do betrayal encounters or stuff like that, your health will start ticking down quite rapidly. So that's why I just put Ice Bite to my Herald of Ice, since I have enough mana anyway to support it, and this will give us Frenzy Charges instead. But if you don't care about the degen, Blood Rage is still better, since it does give you a bit of attack speed as well. So especially for Awaken or something, the Blood Rage would be a nice addition to your damage. And then second wind, dash, and Val Haste, just our movement skill. And here we have Frost Bomb, a Snaring Arrow with Ballista Totem, so you just put this down on bosses and they melt. I only really use this for Awakener and maybe Uber Elder if I did that. Everything else you don't really need to bother with it. But the Ballista Totem, they still actually have quite a decent amount of damage by themselves, even though they're only supposed to be used for the debuff, but with all their dexterity, all that flat gold gets added to them as well. So the Flasks, I think still the same, just Quicksilver of Adrenaline, Diamond Flask, a Cinder Swallow, a Bald Fate, and Dying Sun. Our jewels, so I've spoken about the Implicit already. This one is Dex, Life, Cold Damage, and Attack Speed. And then this one we have double cold damage, attack speed, and life. I got quite lucky crafting this actually, because the other suffix was supposed to be either crit multi or another attack speed roll, but we actually exalted that and got tier 1 cold damage to attacks, which is actually insane. So it's pretty lucky on that one. Next up, Watcher Eye still the same. Large Cluster I think still the same as well. This jewel, I don't think I had it before, but we managed to get this jewel with the implicit for relatively cheap actually, and then we crafted it out. And this one, I think we still have the same, Corrupted Blood. I tried finding one with better molds, but there isn't really like a 4-mod jewel, so this one will have to do. It still has double dex and damage with bows, so it's a pretty good jewel for Corrupted Blood. Or Brutal, which again, it's a very good seed, because again, he gives me over 400 dexterity, and that's why our padding looks like this, but the skill tree is still the same I think. I didn't change anything around. Again, if you wanted to drop some nodes, I dropped this movement speed, so you have 5 nodes over here. So if you're level 95, you can copy the 3 and drop this, but it depends on your Brutal, since if you don't have an insane Brutal like this, you would probably drop these nodes. You'd even consider dropping these. You maybe pad differently, so it's up to you on how your Brutal looks like, on how many nodes you would take in the region. Again, this one's still the same I think, this one's still the same. Still have our small jewels to cap our resists, which I think I spoke about last time. So the one node I did change is this one. So first of all, we got Storm Rider, which pretty much gives us power charges on bosses. So it's pretty helpful to get your crit capped, which ours is 99% without even investing too much in crit, so it's pretty good. Now the other node is Cold Conduction. So about this I've asked quite a few people, and the answers I got are pretty split, or most people just don't know. So this is a pretty complicated one. Now I'll tell you how it's supposed to work, or how I think it works, and how it might work. So first of all, it says enemies chilled by your hits are shocked, enemies shocked by your hits are chilled, and it also says the base value, so shock increases damage taken by 15%, and chill reduces enemy action speed by 10%. Now we're mainly focused on the enemies chilled by your hits are shocked, since they're mainly cool damage. Now the way ailments work is, if you crit, you will always apply the ailment. So we have 99% crit chance, which means we're pretty much always critting. So as long as we have a little bit of lightning damage, we will apply shock. If we have a little bit of fire damage, we will apply ignite. And if we have a little bit of cold damage, which we have a lot of, we will apply chill. Now how strong your ailment is depends on how much damage you deal of that damage type. So of course, as you see with this much cold damage, we'll most likely apply a very high chill percent. Of course, all the ailments are capped, so we will pretty much hit a very high chill. Now our lightning and fire, we have so little that we'll pretty much just barely ignite them for the lowest amount possible, which for lightning is 15%. Now the way this node works is you can look at it two ways. So the way I think it works is enemies chilled by hits are shocked, which I think will just apply the base value shock like it says here. So that's what I think it does, which pretty much makes this node kind of useless in a crit build, since as long as you have a little bit of lightning damage, you will already shock anyway. But the way it might work, which kind of would make this node very overpowered, is enemies chilled by hits are shocked, and if the shock is dependent on the hit that applied the chill, which this node will be extremely overpowered then for pretty much any all cold build or any all lightning build, since not so much for lightning, since chill it's kind of nice but it doesn't do damage multiplier. But if you're full on cold based like us and you apply a very big shock because of it, it makes the enemies take so much more increased damage, so that would be extremely overpowered. So again, I don't have an answer for you on how it works, whether it's just a normal shock or a full-on shock based on your cold damage. But again, if it was based on your cold damage, I think it would be too overpowered. So I feel like it isn't, but I've heard mixed reviews. Either way, we're using the node because there isn't really too much else we could use with Storm Rider, so may as well go for this in the off chance it does work like that. And that was pretty much the build, and probably the last time you'll see this build, since I've been playing this build for so long, like a couple of weeks now, especially being level 100 and pretty much min-maxed to the point where I'm not doing any upgrades anymore for quite a while now. It does get pretty boring and repetitive. I'm starting to get burnt out from PoE, so I think maybe starting a new project or a new build, or maybe even solo self-found might freshen things for me. I've considered leaving the build for standard even, because most of this gear is probably going to be unattainable in any other leagues, and it's pretty min-maxed, so it would be cool, but I think I'll put it up for sale, since I've had a few people messaging me about some pieces, and maybe even the whole build as a whole, but I'll see if I can find some buyers. I prefer selling it as a whole, but I guess we'll see with that, and maybe the next video will be about some other builds or some crafting videos or something like that, so hope you enjoyed that. Last thing, the POBs. So I have a community POB. Started using community fork, since it does calculate a few extra things than a normal POB, but I'll leave both links below. So if you have the community fork, I'd suggest using that. If you just have normal POB, the link will be there as well. It just won't have all the configuration applied to it. So I did put the configuration. I didn't take frenzy charges since we don't have them on bosses, but for any other person like Delph or something, you will have a frenzy charges, so you see there's a lot of damage. Also the gear, if you see here, fake brutal, that's pretty much the stats my brutal gives me. So 20% dex, so 136 flat dex, the crit chance on that, and then the 10% more damage, and it's actually coming from a weapon, as you see the line here in red. So with the jump chain additional time, so that's not calculated, so I put it in here, so it does calculate. Since that it does give us 10% more damage for each remaining chain. So barrage on bosses, of course, you'll always have a remaining chain extra. So that's that. I think everything else is pretty straightforward. Now if I were to change one thing on the build, it would be the body. Since with how much crit we have, we actually have 99% effective crit chance, which is actually a lot considering we only have the 5% base crit on our bow as well. So if we change their chest from the attack crit on here to frenzy charge on hit instead, so you can see we do lose quite a bit of crit, so we would have still 95.6% effective crit, which isn't dropping too much. We didn't even lose that much damage from it, but what this allows us, it would have frenzy charge on bosses, which as you can see that gives us so much more damage. The reason why I haven't bothered with this actually is, so first of all, anything except Awakener we will have frenzy charge anyway, so all the Conquerors, even Uber Elder, Delve, like anything like that, you will have frenzy charges since there's mobs there. So the only thing it would benefit us is Awakener, which Awakener we already melted down instantly. And on top of that is just I think the extra crit to get even higher effective crit is just nicer for the consistency. So that's why I haven't bothered, but I guess that's one thing you could change out if you wanted to. And that's pretty much the build, so I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you in the next one.